So I'm just going to flip into now into the actual demo, into the dashboard. So what I'm going to do now is actually jump into the ReviewPro dashboard, which you will have access to as accredited members of VTIC for your business. So I'm just going to share this here. So to explain with ReviewPros, this is our reputation management dashboard, and this is a dashboard that we've created especially for the Tourism Industry Council. So it's a version, we have a full version of this that has lots of other bells and whistles on it, but the basic version is what we provide in partnership with Tourism Industry Council as a way for you as a business to have a really great solution you have access to through your membership. It provides a lot of value and allows you to manage your reputation and your reviews. So it's a cloud-based solution. So in other words, you just log into it on a desktop, but there's also a mobile version that you can download on your phone and then log in exactly the same way and see the same information on your phone if you prefer to work like that. Most people use the desktop version. When we log in, for those of you you may have already logged in and may already be using ReviewPro, or maybe some of you haven't logged in yet. But once you log in, you'll be logged in and you'll see your business name here. We're looking at a business, obviously this is not in Victoria. Well, I don't think there's any crocodiles in Victoria, so this is a Northern Territory operator. So we can see here we logged in as this particular business. There's a menu bar on the side, which you can click and see and move into the various dashboard areas. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see it's very important that you look at what date range. So when you log in, normally the default will go to look at the last 30 days. So normally, so here we're looking at the last 30 days of review data. So this, in other words, since the 8th of November, this business has received 45 reviews. And so all the analysis we're looking at here is based on those 45 reviews in the last 30 days. However, if you want to look at something more, you can click on the date period and we can actually look at the last 365 days and apply that. And then the view will change and we'll see a completely different set of data. And now we see that in the last 365 days, they've had 427 reviews. So just changing the date period will give you a different set of data, and it just depends on what you want to look at. You can also change what you want the comparison period to be. So at this one, we'll look at the same period last year, but you may just want to look at the previous period. So if you're looking at the last 30 days, you might want to compare your comparison to be the previous 30 days. You can easily do that, or you can customize it. So we'll just leave it as this for now. So we're looking at 30 days of data for this particular operator. And when we see on the left here, there's the menu options. So we're starting off in the dashboard, and this is showing the high level information and analysis based on these reviews. So we can see they've had 45 reviews in the past 30 days. Underneath that in the grey, it says -18, which means that it's 18 less than the previous same time last year, which makes sense because this time last year there was no coronavirus and they would have been operating in a normal scenario. So they've had less, but still good that they're, you know, it's only 18 less. So they're obviously now into a better period of time where they're picking up in terms of volume. And then around the edge of the donut, you see most of that's in green. That's indicative of whether each of the reviews that they've had have given a score, as you know, like 4 out of 5 or 2 out of 10. Each of those individuals are classified as whether a positive, a neutral or a negative review based on the score. So we can see most of them are positive reviews. There's a few negative. The grey area is what we class as not rated, which means because there are some review platforms, mostly it refers to Facebook, because Facebook reviews don't have a score, as you know. It's just a would you recommend, yes or no. So they'll give a review, it's counted as a review, but obviously they haven't rated it, so it's not a score, it's just a yes or a no. And we do track that in another area, and I'll show you where you can see those, but that's what that relates to. And then we see the Global Review Index, which we referred to a few times already. This relates to the scores of all those individual reviews. Each day that you receive new reviews, the GRI will be recalculated based on your new review scores. So every time a new score comes in, so 2 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5, those scores will go into this algorithm that gives you a score out of 100 that then reflects how you're doing overall based on all your review scores. Now, it also has weighting in there. So it's not just an average, it's not just a straight average. What it does, it also weights the more recent review scores. So the reason for that is that you want your score to be more indicative of what is happening now in your business, you know, what's happening in more recent times, because that's more reflective of what's happening operationally for you. And it's also reflective of what people are going to be looking at. As we said before, you may recall that people will generally look at more recent reviews and make their decisions based on those. So we always want our overall score to include all the review scores we've had, but also something that's more reflective of what's happening now. So you'll see this score move and change a lot, which is good, because if you're trying to analyse your business just based on looking at, say, your TripAdvisor score, as you know, it very rarely moves. It sits at, 4 or 4.5, and you might have loads of new reviews and new positive reviews, and it's still sitting at 4 because it takes a long time to move that needle, because it's only a score out of 5. Whereas this, because it takes into account all your different platforms and also the fact that it's weighted, it moves and changes a lot more. So it's a really good really good measurement of how you're doing in terms of online reputation and customer satisfaction. So we see that they're at 84.8%, which is great. They've actually dropped 5.6 points though, based on the previous year's results. So they've gone down a little, still performing well though. So there may be a few more recent negative reviews that have contributed to that. So, but these are all the things you want to know as a business. Then the semantic analysis, we're going to go into a bit more detail later, but this is actually not looking at scores. This is looking at what people are talking about within reviews. Because in ReviewPro, what we do is we have a look and analyse everything that people talk about within their reviews. So we break down the whole review into all the different concepts that they mention. So they might mention friendly staff. They might mention the food was great, or the tea was cold, or the floor was dirty. So all those mentions we tag. This is a positive mention about service. This is a negative mention about the floor. This is a negative mention about cleanliness, and so on. And so overall, this says 76% of all the things that people mentioned in their reviews was positive. So that's an overall. But where the real value of semantic comes is looking in the semantic tab, which we're going to look in and see what that refers to. What are people talking about that's negative and positive. And then we also mentioned management response. We measure that, so we can see of their 45 reviews, they've responded so far to 4.9%. That's those that are published so we track when reviews are published on a review site, and then when you've responded and when the management response is published on the site, that's when we pick that up and track that, and that's when we know you've responded, because obviously we don't necessarily know when you responded, and it's not really considered responded to until it's published on the actual website, and that's when we pick that up. So they've responded so far to 4.9%. So again, if you were tracking this and if you were as a business were hoping to have responded to more, then that would obviously be something you'd want to investigate. And then down here we can see the index evolution over the 30 days. So that's the GRI score and how it's moved and changed. So how it changes like every week. So we can see how it has changed. This is really useful when you look at it over 365 days. And you can see very interestingly how things have changed. And I often hear feedback from operators that say, this often really reflects changes in things that have happened operationally or staff or things like that. They've had a new manager that's come in that's done really well, and they see a complete, there's a direct correlation between their GRI improving after they've had someone that's come in and improved the business. So we can see here the GRI has kind of ebbed and flowed, and it did drop around this time, but it's picked up again. And then the shaded area down here represents the review volume. So you can see obviously there was a massive dip around this time, March through to June, where their review volume went down really low because obviously they weren't having as many people traveling. So that's what we're looking at there. So there's some of the key indicators that you want to look at when you're using ReviewPro, and we'll just apply this and look at the last 30 days again. So if we scroll down a little more, We also see down here the group ranking. Now, you'll see something different because you're in Victoria. This is just comparing. So this business, they're seeing how they're doing versus the rest of their Northern Territory operators. As a Victorian business, you'll be compared to, obviously, businesses within Victoria. So you'll be able to benchmark and get a measurement of how you're doing with that. And then if we tick into the results area, this just kind of gives you the ability to drill down a bit further and see a bit more information. So we can see now, where are our reviews coming from? So we see all sources. We see 22 from TripAdvisor, 13 from Google, and 10 from Facebook. So we see where they're coming from. And if you look in the 365 days, you'd see over that period of time, you know, where most of our reviews coming from. The index score represents the scores just from that particular platform. So you can see if there's any differences in certain platforms that don't score you. And you can see Facebook has 0 because, as we mentioned, they don't score. So we track it. However, in the mentions anywhere you see in ReviewPro always relates to semantic analysis. So in other words, on TripAdvisor, their score is 84%. But in terms of what people are talking about, 79% of what people have mentioned in their TripAdvisor reviews is positive. On Google, they're getting a lot more negative mentions. So 45% of what people have mentioned on their Google reviews is negative. So that would be definitely something as a business you go, oh, okay, that's a different trend. We need to investigate. You know, why is it some of our Google reviews are not as favourable as our TripAdvisor reviews, for example? So you may want to investigate that. And then we also look by language and country, which at the moment obviously is not going to be particularly relevant for any of us in Australia, but we still have businesses and clients all around the world that are getting clients from international sources as well. But when that comes back, you'll be able to see that again. And then we'll just look at the semantic, and then I'll just show you through the review response area. So semantic, when we look in here, this is just a really high level way to look at your semantic analysis and see, you know, what are people mainly talking about in terms of our categories, in terms of what people are saying, whether it's positive or negative. So we can see most positive mentions are about the experience, about the staff, about the location. So you can see the percentage. So they've had 88% of their mentions about experience is positive. 100% of mentions about location is positive, and so on. And we can expand this. If you click on the little expand, and then you can see everything. So again, you can see because it's only a month, there's not as many mentions. So if you want to see more info, you probably look at 365 days and have a look really at what people are saying in those areas. So finally, we're going to go into the tracking area, which is kind of your everyday area to be able to go and see all your reviews in one place. So remember, we're just looking at 30 days. So we've had 45 reviews and they're all listed here. So our most recent review on the 6th of December on Facebook is here. And then if we scroll down, we see there's a Google review that gave 5 out of 5. It was untitled, which means they gave a score, but they didn't write a review. So it's just untitled, but obviously we track the score. And then we've got another one here, and that's their review. And then we have another one from Facebook, as you see, not rated because they have a yes or no. And then we see their review here. And then you'll see there's a response button. So we can respond from here. Now, when you click on this button, it's going to open up a new window that will take you to Facebook or Booking or Google or whatever it is. The first time you use that, you'll need to, like you normally do, log into the extranet of that particular review platform with your credentials, because you're always still responding on that platform because you have to fulfill the guidelines of those review platforms. But as long as you don't log out at the end of the session, so if you go into your Google and you log into the Management Centre, as long as you don't log out at the end, you go down to the next one and you click respond, open up the window, it'll take you straight into Google. So you don't have to log in every time, it saves that. One of the main reasons to use this area, I mean, you can still respond on those. You could open up all your tabs and go and find all your reviews. Obviously, it's just much quicker to go in here and say, okay, right, I've got all these reviews. We can even go into the filters. I highly recommend using this. Go into the filters and say, okay, just show me everything without a response, because all I want to do right now, when I clear out the clutter, I just want to know how many haven't responded to. So we can see there's still 43 there. And then you go through and respond to those. If that's something that you do a lot, you can save that as a new view and call it not responded or something like that. And then you don't have to do that filter every time. You can just click on that, save the view, and then under here you'll have on the drop down you've got not responded, so you can quickly go to that every time and see you're not responded. Okay, and then you could also create an alert. So you see there's another one here I created earlier called negative review. So I created a filter that just shows me my negative reviews. So this could be useful to either look at, or you might want to create an alert every time you receive a negative review, because you just want to get you want to know they're the sort of priority ones. So if you say, I just want to create an alert every time a new review is received based on this criteria, which is a negative review, send the alert to me. And then if you've got other users in your business, you can also add them in as well. You create the alert, and then every time a new review occurs that fulfills that criteria, you'll get an alert to your email. So it's a good way of setting. If you set up a few triggers like this, either for all reviews or for negative reviews, whatever it is that you want to track, then it really does help you and remind you to use this solution and remind you to respond to reviews and so on. You can also, under the area here, under manage, you can go in and actually set up reports. So you might want to have like set up a weekly or a monthly report or something like that. So under the reports, you can go in here and you can schedule a report, and you can say how frequently you want it, what you want to compare it to, and then again, whether you want to share it to yourself or you want to add in other users as well. Create the report and then you'll receive that whenever you schedule it. If you ever want to change it, you can just go into your reports here. It'll be listed there and you can either edit it or remove it if you want to, or remove certain people that if they've left and you don't want them getting it anymore. So that covers a very basic demo of the solution. I hope that's provided a bit of insight for those of you that haven't logged in already.